Now, Parliament hopes to finalise the SABC Bill by June of this year. That's according to the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee of Communications and Digital Technologies, Khusela Sangoni-Diko. She made the comments during the media briefing of the Chairpersons of the Economic Cluster in Parliament. In November last year, Communications Minister Solly Malatsi withdrew the controversial SABC Bill, arguing that it doesn't adequately address the public broadcasters' funding model, a move seen as unconstitutional by Parliament. Sangoni-Diko says the bill will be prioritised this year and MultiChoice must pay SABC for its DSTV channel. Streaming services and over-the-top carriers will also be regulated. Meanwhile, the Employment and Labour Committee chairperson says the Labour Department must ensure that labour laws are complied with, as fines are not a deterrent for illegal immigration. Director of Media Monitoring Africa, William Bird, joins in the discussion. A very good evening to you, William. Thank you for your time. Having listened to the different viewpoints on, what needs to happen going forward, the Communications Minister believes that the SABC Bill doesn't sufficiently address the broadcasters' financial stability, which is essentially how we got here, you and I. How far back can one now trace the SABC's current financial crisis?
Well, good evening. I mean, it's been decades in the making, hasn't it, really? And that's been, no small thanks to Parliament failing to do its job for decades. The simple reality is that there's not been an updated broadcasting policy for over 2 decades. We are expecting the SABC to operate under a policy that was designed and implemented in 1999. It's an extraordinary idea that you should expect a broadcaster to operate with something that's over 2 decades out of date, and then to wonder why its financial position is continuing to decline. You go ahead and you switch off the analog signal when the SABC is nowhere near ready, and what do you think is going to happen? When it loses so much audience, when you've got the rise of digital. So these things are critical issues that Parliament and government has been actively involved in, and either through omission or commission of acts has undermined the SABC's ability to function. You then have this SABC bill being introduced before the policy, a new policy is there. You have so many aspects of this bill that are in direct contradiction to the draft policy that was being discussed. And you then have a minister that acts in line with the views of the overwhelming majority of everyone that made submissions. And for some reason, Parliament now has it in its mind that this bill is going to do something to save SABC. It isn't. If it is passed, it will only make things materially worse for the SABC, which means the real question you have to ask is why is Parliament so intent on passing and wanting to adopt what is a patently unconstitutional bill? There's no way that you can simply remedy the existing bill with a few small tweaks. So we are heading into, again, a period where whatever political ideas are harming and are posing fatal threats to the public broadcaster.
How will it make things worse? I mean, are you talking, as you talk about some of the tweaks, some suggestions have been made on revenue generation. What components should a viable funding model have?
So when you look at the elements that are in the bill, or the last version that was presented that we all made public comments on, the elements that were there that talked about the alternative mechanisms that SABC could use to generate funds, those were copy and pasted literally from the 1999 Broadcasting Amendment Act. So there's nothing new there. The only new thing in relation to the bill, to the SABC, was the stipulation that said that SABC, or that the minister would have to have 3 years to come up with a new model. To the new minister's credit, he said, no, we are starting, I'm sure this is a story that's been reported extensively, that they are looking to work on and come up with alternative funding mechanisms for the SABC. This is something that government should have been doing for the past 2 decades. It didn't. Parliament didn't do this. And then I hear in the reporting that just before this that you said they must, MultiChoice must now pay for carrying SABC. These are must-carry rules. These are issues that not this board but the previous board raised with the regulator ICASA. So there's failures to materially address and meaningfully impact what the SABC is doing by the regulator, ICASA, by Parliament, and by government. And now you get this idea that they are somehow going to magically make everything okay with a bill that every party that presented was deeply critical of. The SABC said it would not work. The various political parties that were there present said this would not work. Civil society, labor unions, the public, the broadcasters, all of us said in an extraordinary turn of events in Parliament that this bill was an incredibly bad, hopeless, not fit for purpose bill. And yet Parliament is intent on running like a bull through a china shop on trying to say, well, this is the bill that's going to answer things. It isn't, it can't, it won't. And if they pass it in anywhere near the shape that it's in, all that'll happen is that it'll go to court and it'll further delay things. So it really is not an answer to helping the SABC. What the minister is doing around finding a new funding model, that's a very constructive step. What we've been calling for is for the SABC, for ministers, for a government to actually pass a bill that is actually progressive and in line with the policy intentions that we've seen. This version of the bill that splits public commercial, it's never worked, it hasn't worked, it can never work. It was in the policy dimensions, and yet that seems to be the only material shift away. And so, it's a head-scratching opportunity where you look at it and go, why would Parliament do this?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, William. Thanks for weighing in on this discussion. Reacting there, Director of Media Monitoring Africa, William Bird, expanding on thoughts around a viable funding model and what lies ahead for the SABC Bill.